The first warning came not from radar, not from sensors, not from the high towers of government or the silent halls of the military. It came from a child. On the rooftops of Karachi, a girl no older than 12 pointed at the sky, tugging on her brother's arm. "Look," she whispered, her voice caught between awe and terror. The heavens were ablaze. Dozens, no, hundreds of trails carved white fire across the night like burning veins against a black canvas. Each streak grew brighter, closer. The boy laughed at first, thinking it fireworks. Then the ground trembled. Car alarms howled. The air thickened with a low, teeth-rattling rumble. It was not celebration, it was invasion. Around the world, eyes turned skyward. Farmers dropped their tools in the fields of Argentina. Lovers froze mid-kiss on the bridges of Paris. Soldiers in distant bunkers cursed as their monitors lit up with impossible readings. The sky was falling, but not in silence. The roar of engines, the hiss of flame, and the thunder of power shook the bones of humanity. Lieutenant Marcus Hale stood on the cracked rooftop of a hospital in Nairobi, his rifle slung across his back, sweat-cutting lines through the dirt on his face. He wasn't supposed to be here. He had left the war years ago, walking away from uniform and orders after too many friends came home in caskets. But when the broadcast started, alien ships blotting out the sun, cities trembling under their shadow, he had done what all ex-soldiers swore they wouldn't. He picked up his rifle again. Beside him stood Dr. Yara Enkeru, a medical officer who had dragged Marcus out of the wreckage of a collapsed street when the first bombardment hit. She was small, sharp-eyed, her dark hair tied back with ruthless practicality. Her lab coat was shredded, smeared with ash and blood, but she stood taller than most soldiers Marcus had ever met. "They're not aiming for people yet," she said, her voice steady despite the chaos below. Fires spread across the city, buildings cracked and bled smoke, but the strikes had landed on power plants, radio towers, and communication hubs. Precision, intimidation. Marcus spat into the wind. "They're softening us up." Yara turned to him, eyes like steel. "Then we can't let them finish." High above Earth, the Graxian fleet drifted into formation, 30 warships glowing like a crown of steel and fire. On the flagship Oblivion's maw, Commander Verax leaned over the command dais, his mandibles clattering with satisfaction. "Status," he barked. "Orbit achieved. Atmospheric scans complete," answered Nexus, the ship's tactical officer, tendrils moving like liquid across his console. "Their defenses are primitive. Nuclear weapons, scattered militaries, fractured governments. Easy prey." Verax clicked his jaws in amusement. "Another conquest for the Empire. They'll beg before dawn." But Lieutenant Zeleth, younger, quieter, shifted uneasily at his station. He had studied humans more carefully than his commander cared to. Their history was chaos, yes, wars upon wars, empires rising and falling, but it was a chaos that never broke them, a chaos that forged them. Still, he said nothing. His orders were clear. Down on Earth, chaos had a name: panic. Governments shouted across scrambled frequencies. Civilians flooded streets, clutching radios, phones, children. Nuclear powers stood on alert, missiles primed but uncertain. No one knew if the invaders could be fought or if resistance would doom them all. Marcus and Yara reached the hospital stairwell, guiding survivors down through dust and rubble. An old woman clutched a child to her chest, refusing to move until Marcus gently pried the boy free and carried him himself. Everywhere the same question burned in the air: what do they want? The answer came minutes later, booming across every channel, every frequency, every screen that still flickered with life. The voice was deep, alien, metallic. "Attention, inhabitants of Earth. I am Commander Verax of the Graxian Empire. Your planet is now under our control. Surrender immediately and submit to our authority. Resistance is futile and will result in unnecessary loss of life. You have one planetary rotation to respond. Choose wisely." The message repeated, translated into 100 tongues. It left no room for negotiation, no room for pride, only surrender or death. And yet across the world, something unexpected stirred. Not fear, not silence, but laughter. In Washington, Admiral Jackson of the U.S. Navy glared into a camera. "If this is some kind of joke, it's in very poor taste. If it's an actual threat, be advised that any hostile action will be met with overwhelming force." In Beijing, President Lin of the East Asian Alliance stood before her generals. "We do not recognize your authority. Leave our skis or face consequences." In New Delhi, Prime Minister Kapur addressed the nation. India categorically rejects your demands. Our forces stand ready. And in homes, in apartments, in villages, ordinary people turned on webcams and phones, recording their defiance. A mechanic in Brazil shouted into his phone, "Come and take it, space lobsters." A grandmother in Berlin raised her cane and declared she had lived through Hitler, through Stalin, through the fall of walls, and she would live through this too. Teenagers in Tokyo cheered, mistaking the invasion for the greatest ARG alternate reality game ever launched. The responses flooded the Graxian comm channels. Thousands of voices, thousands of refusals. Verax froze, mandibles clattering in confusion. What is this? Zelith studied the screens, his unease sharpening into something colder, admiration. They are not surrendering, Commander. Marcus watched from the shattered window of the hospital as missiles streaked upward. At first he thought they were firing at the fleet, but the trajectories were wrong. The warheads burst high in the atmosphere, silent flashes rippling like phantom suns. The city below flickered, lights dead, radios silent, cars stalled. An electromagnetic pulse. Yara's eyes widened. They're blind. Marcus grinned despite himself. Hell of a move. Above, the Graxian fleet shuddered. Screens went dark. Sensors screamed. Communications fractured. The humans hadn't aimed at the ships. They had aimed at the very air between them, turning the sky itself into a shield of interference. Sacrificing their own satellites, their own networks, crippling themselves just to strike a blow. It was insane. It was brilliant. Zelith whispered what none of his commanders dared admit. They're adapting. The invasion faltered. Landing craft plunged into the atmosphere, expecting easy conquest. Instead, they were met with submarines breaching the oceans, losing torpedoes and missiles. Troops that made it to the ground found not empty fields, but streets alive with resistance. Soldiers stood beside civilians, militias beside engineers, farmers beside doctors. They fought with everything: rifles, knives, Molotov cocktails, even fireworks rigged into rocket traps. Marcus and Yara led their ragtag group of survivors through alleys as Graxian troops advanced. Drones hummed overhead, searching. Marcus raised his rifle, but Yara grabbed his arm. "Not yet," she hissed. "We hit them when they don't expect it." The city was their weapon now. Narrow streets, collapsing stairwells, hidden basements, every shadow became an ambush. The Graxians had conquered 37 worlds, but none like this. None where every man, woman, and child refused to kneel. And then came the moment that shook both sides. A Graxian troop carrier fell in flames over the Pacific, crashing into the waves. Human ships swarmed it, hauling wreckage, seizing weapons, dragging survivors into custody. Hours later, the first Graxian plasma cannon fired again, this time from a human vessel. On the bridge of the Oblivion's maw, Zelith felt his heart seize. They've already learned to use our weapons. Verax roared, slamming a claw into the console. Impossible. But the evidence burned on every screen. Humans, in less than a day, were wielding Graxian technology against them. In Nairobi, Marcus held his rifle as the night sky lit with fresh fire, half in fear, half in awe. Yara pressed a bloodied hand to her side, but stood firm, her voice steady. "They thought we were prey," she said. Marcus looked at the heavens, at the chaos above, at the impossible battle raging. "No," he muttered, "they're about to learn what kind of predators we are." The night sky burned, not with stars but with falling ships. Marcus Hale crouched in the ruins of a collapsed school, the bitter smell of smoke filling his lungs. The city around him was alive with battle. Machine gun fire rattled from rooftops. Car alarms wailed beneath the thunder of plasma strikes. And in the distance, the guttural cry of thousands of voices rose as militias clashed with invaders in the streets. "Reload," Marcus barked. His hands worked on instinct, slamming a new magazine into his rifle. The weapon was old, battered, barely suited against the Graxians' armored soldiers. But in the shadows of the school's ruins, every bullet mattered. Beside him, Yara Enkeru tore a strip of cloth from her shredded coat and tied it around the leg of a boy no older than 16. The boy's breathing was ragged, but he gritted his teeth, refusing to cry out. His weapon, an old hunting rifle, rested beside him, blood on the stock. "You're not done yet," Yara whispered, her voice firm, not gentle. "You hold on, you fight, that's what we do." The boy nodded, swallowing his pain. Marcus caught Yara's eyes and saw what the Graxians could not read in their data, what no scan could measure: willpower. Above the city, the Graxian fleet struggled. Inside the Oblivion's maw, Commander Verax paced the deck, mandibles clattering with rage. "Casualty reports," he demanded. Nexus tendrils hesitated over his console. 17 landing craft destroyed, ground forces reporting unexpected resistance, human militias are coordinating attacks, losses high. Verax's claws slammed against the metal floor. "Hi, they are primitives, how?" "Commander," Zeleth interrupted, his voice calm though his hearts raced. "They are not fighting like any species we have faced. They do not wait for orders. They do not centralize. Each group acts independently, adapting in ways we cannot predict." Verax glared. "Then burn them out, level their cities." Zeleth's mandibles clicked uneasily. He wanted to protest, but Verax's fury brooked no dissent. Orders went out. Plasma batteries rotated toward Earth's largest population centers. And then the flagship shuddered. "Impact," Nexus cried. "Sector 7 breach, their weapons cannot." "They're using ours," Zeleth said quietly, watching as human ships, makeshift, crude, but armed with Graxian plasma cannons, poured fire into the fleet. In the ruins of Nairobi, Marcus and Yara ducked as the sky lit up with explosions. The ground shook as burning wreckage fell across the city. "Did we do that?" the boy whispered, awe in his voice. Marcus stared up. For the first time in hours, a grin tugged at his lips. "Yeah, kid, that was us." But celebration was short-lived. Across the horizon, a Graxian troop carrier roared lower, its hull glowing with fire as it descended. It smashed into the earth with thunder, metal jaws opening, disgorging a wave of soldiers. Their armor glowed under the flames, insectoid bodies moving with unnatural precision. Plasma rifles lit the streets, turning walls and bodies alike to ash. Yara pulled the boy back. "Move into the alleys." Marcus stayed a heartbeat longer, raising his rifle. He squeezed off 3 shots, the rounds pinging uselessly off alien armor. The 4th found a joint in a soldier's plating, dropping it. The others swiveled, firing back. Marcus dived behind rubble as the wall exploded in sparks. "Go," he shouted, sprinting after Yara and the boy. The Graxians advanced, but for every step forward, the humans bled them. In alleyways, Molotovs rained down. In the sewers, improvised bombs detonated. In the high-rises, snipers picked targets through shattered windows. Every street was a trap, every building a fortress. Zeleth monitored from orbit, unease growing into dread. "Commander, reports indicate civilians are fighting alongside their militaries. Resistance is." "Unacceptable," Verax roared. "Deploy drones, smoke them out." Zeleth's eyes flicked across the data. Civilian militias, improvised weapons, communication without electronics, drums, horns, even trained animals. None of it made sense, yet it worked. "Commander," he hesitated, "we are not facing soldiers. We are facing a species that refuses to surrender." Verax hissed, "Then we will teach them fear." Fear was a weapon Marcus knew well. He had lived under it in the deserts of war, in the long nights when silence meant death. But tonight, as he crouched with Yara and the boy in the ruins of a church, fear had changed. It was no longer something to run from. It was fuel. The church's stained glass windows lay shattered, saints broken beneath alien fire. The boy looked at them and whispered, "They'll kill us all, won't they?" Marcus tightened his grip on his rifle. "Not if we kill them first." Yara shot him a look, inspiring. Marcus almost laughed. "Hey, I'm not a preacher." "Then start sounding like one," she snapped, her eyes fierce. "Because these people need more than guns, they need hope." Her words sank into him like a blade. Marcus had walked away from leadership once, but now, looking at the boy, at Yara, at the survivors huddled in the shadows, he knew there was no walking away again. He stood, rifle raised, voice loud enough to echo through the ruins. "You hear me?" he shouted to the survivors. "They think we're weak, they think we'll roll over, but we're still here. And as long as we breathe, they don't win. We fight, we bleed, we die if we have to, but we don't stop. Ever. That's who we are." The words lit something in the group. Faces hardened. Weapons were gripped tighter. Even the boy straightened, pain etched across his features, but fire in his eyes. Yara's lips curved just slightly. "That's more like it." Above Earth, Graxian landing ships descended in formation. Dozens, then hundreds, darkening the sky. Verax's command echoed across the fleet. "Deploy ground forces, crush them." Zeleth's heart sank. He knew what was coming, streets awash in blood, civilizations burned. But this time, doubt gnawed at him. For every calculation, every projection, humans refused to follow the script. And as he stared at the streams of reports flooding in, one detail struck him cold. The humans were not breaking. They were uniting. On the ground, Marcus led his group through the city's burning veins. They struck fast, vanished faster. A Graxian patrol turned a corner and never made it out. Another squad disappeared into the smoke of an ambush. But for every victory, there was loss. Civilians cut down in alleys, fighters buried in rubble. Every street cost blood. The boy stumbled, collapsing against a wall. Yara caught him, pressing fingers to his throat. He's slipping. Marcus cursed, scanning the burning street. We can't stop. If we stop, we die. Yara's eyes snapped to his. Then you carry him. Marcus hesitated only a second before slinging his rifle and lifting the boy onto his back. The weight nearly broke him, but as he staggered forward, he felt something else, a strange clarity. This was why he fought, not for orders, not for nations, but for the fragile, furious spark of life clinging to him. Night bled into dawn. The sky glowed with smoke and fire. Humanity should have been broken. Instead, they raged. In New York, militias pushed alien troops into the rivers. In Moscow, armored divisions rolled from underground bunkers, weapons firing. In the deserts of Egypt, soldiers and villagers together buried explosives beneath the sand, turning the earth itself against the invaders. From orbit, Zeleth watched with disbelief. Commander, this is not conquest, this is war. Verax's mandibles clattered. Then we will give them war. The Oblivion's maw shifted, weapons aligning toward Earth's surface. Plasma bombardment codes armed, energy reserves spiked. Zeleth froze. Commander, orbital bombardment will slaughter millions, civilians, children. Verax's eyes blazed. That is the point, break their spirit, show them resistance means extinction. Zeleth hesitated, mandibles trembling. His voice was quiet, dangerous. Commander, if you do this, you will not just break their spirit. You will awaken something you cannot control. Verax ignored him. His claw hovered over the firing sequence. On Earth, Marcus looked skyward as the clouds glowed with the heat of gathering fire. His gut went cold. They're going to burn us, he whispered. Yara's voice cut like steel. Then we burn them first. The air shook, the flagship's weapons powered to full. The countdown began. The world held its breath. Above Earth, the Oblivion's maw hung like a black sun, its weapons glowing with cruel light. 30 Graxian warships aligned in formation, energy cores pulsing, their power swelling to a breaking point. On Earth below, cities burned, streets flooded with smoke, and millions stared skyward, waiting for annihilation. Marcus Hale stood in the ruins of Nairobi, his arms shaking beneath the weight of the boy slung across his back. His rifle felt heavier than iron. His throat was raw from smoke and shouting. He stared upward as the sky itself seemed to ignite. Is this it? Yara whispered beside him, her eyes reflecting the fire. Marcus didn't answer. He couldn't. For the first time in years, the soldier had no plan, no move left. He was just a man under a burning sky, waiting for the end. On the bridge of the Oblivion's maw, Commander Verax spread his mandibles in a jagged smile. His claws hovered above the firing controls, savoring the moment. Watch, he hissed. Watch how they break. Commander, Zeleth said, his voice low but steady. His hands trembled against the edge of his console. This is not conquest, this is extermination. Verax's head snapped toward him. Do you question me, Lieutenant? Zeleth forced his mandibles shut, his 4 eyes fixed on the blazing sphere below. He remembered the faces on the human transmissions, angry, laughing, unafraid. He thought of their stubborn voices, their defiance even when death loomed. His chest tightened with something he had never felt in war before. Not fear, not pity, something worse. Respect. I question whether you understand what you are awakening, Zeleth whispered. Verax slammed his claw onto the firing sequence. But the sky answered first. Dozens of launch signatures erupted from Earth. Hundreds, then thousands. The tactical deck lit up with warning alarms. Missiles, Nexus cried. Nuclear-tipped multiple continents, simultaneous launches. Verax's laughter rattled through the command deck. Fools, they cannot reach us. Their weapons will fall short. Zeleth's eyes darted across the trajectory calculations, and then he froze. His mandibles clicked in shock. They're not aiming at us, he whispered. The missiles climbed high, thousands of blazing arrows piercing the heavens. And then, one by one, they detonated, not on target but in the upper atmosphere. The world shuddered. A storm of electromagnetic pulse waves cascaded across the skies, layer after layer, blanketing the planet and its orbit. The Graxian fleet convulsed as sensors fried, shields sputtered, communications collapsed into static. "They're blinding us," Nexus screamed, tendrils flailing. On Earth, the lights went out. Cities plunged into darkness. Radios hissed into silence. Computers died. Humanity's technology went blind. But in the streets, people moved anyway. Marcus felt the boy twitch weakly against his back. Yara grabbed his arm. "They shut themselves down," she said, realization dawning. "They killed their own power grids." "To kill theirs," Marcus finished, looking skyward. Above them, the Graxian warships wavered in orbit, their once-perfect formations fraying like thread. They fired blindly, their blasts scorching oceans and deserts instead of cities. The hunters' precision was gone. "Now," Yara whispered, "now they fight." And fight they did. In New York, militias swarmed through rubble, ambushing dazed Graxian patrols, whose targeting drones now crashed uselessly from the sky. In Moscow, tanks with analog firing systems, ancient machines preserved from another age, rolled into the streets, shells thundering against alien armor. In the jungles of South America, guerrilla bands used hand signals and whistles to coordinate ambushes, striking like shadows and vanishing before retaliation could come. And in the deserts of Africa, Marcus and his ragtag survivors launched their own counterattack. "Rockets," Marcus barked, dragging an old launcher from the rubble. Civilians, farmers, shopkeepers, teachers hauled the weapon onto broken ground. Yara steadied the boy, pressing a pistol into his trembling hands. The Graxians advanced, confused, scanning wildly, blind in the interference. "Now," Marcus shouted. The rockets screamed. The first Graxian unit exploded, fire lighting the dawn. The second staggered. The third turned and fired wildly, plasma burning holes into empty ruins. Humans roared and surged forward, their cries louder than the thunder of war. On the Oblivion's maw, chaos ruled. "Systems failing," Nexus cried. "Shields down to 40%, communications gone." Verax slammed his claws against the dais. "Impossible. No species cripples itself, no species chooses ruin." Zeleth's mandibles clicked rapidly. "Perhaps, Commander, that is the difference. They would rather cripple themselves than kneel. They would rather burn their world than surrender it." Verax snarled, "They are irrational animals." Zeleth's eyes burned. "No survivors." Hours later, as the Graxian fleet reeled, another shock came. "Commander," Nexus cried. "Weapon signatures, Graxian technology fired from human ships." On the viewscreen, crude vessels rose from Earth's surface. Retrofitted rockets, submarines surfaced into makeshift missile platforms, even civilian freighters turned into warships. Plasma cannons ripped through the void, Graxian plasma cannons. "They've already reverse-engineered us," Zeleth whispered, awe heavy in his voice. Verax stared in disbelief. "In ours, that's not possible." But it was. Humans were wielding alien weapons against their makers. On Earth, Marcus dragged the boy into the shattered shell of a bus depot, Yara covering them with her pistol. His arms burned, his lungs ached, but his voice never faltered. "They're pulling back," he said, watching the sky. "They're actually pulling back." Yara shook her head, sweat cutting trails through ash on her face. "No, they're bleeding, but they're not done. You don't fight an empire in one night." The boy stirred weakly, whispering, "Did we win?" Marcus met Yara's eyes. Neither spoke. Instead, Marcus squeezed the boy's hand. "We're still here," he said finally. "That's a win." High above, Verax raged. The Graxian fleet was breaking apart, systems blind, ships burning under human fire. "Recall ground forces," he roared. "Regroup, prepare orbital bombardment again." "Commander," Zeleth said, his voice cutting through the chaos, "look around you. We are losing." Verax spun on him, eyes blazing. "The Graxian Empire does not lose." Another blast rocked the flagship. Consoles exploded in sparks. Crew screamed. Warnings flooded the deck. Zeleth stood tall, his mandibles steady. For the first time, he spoke not as a lieutenant, but as a soldier who had seen the truth. Then today, he said softly, the Empire learns how. And then it came, the moment that ended the battle and began something far worse. From the oceans, from the skis, from hidden bases across Earth, signals surged. Human voices in every language, on every frequency, cutting through the interference with one message. One woman's face appeared on screens across the Graxian fleet. Calm, steady, human eyes locked on alien command. "I am Dr. Alina Patel," she said. "You should have done your homework. Humans don't surrender, not to storms, not to plagues, not to each other, and certainly not to you." Her voice grew colder. "You gave us time, that was your third mistake, and time is all we need." Behind her, feeds lit up, nations uniting, militaries moving, civilians rising. Earth was no longer fractured. "Leave now," Patel said, "or the next war will not be fought here, it will be fought in your skis." The channel went dark. Verax's mandibles fell slack. Zelith whispered, "They just declared war on the Empire." The stars blurred as the Graxian fleet limped away. On the command deck of the Oblivion's maw, alarms shrieked, flames licked the walls, and crew scrambled to seal ruptures before atmosphere bled into the void. Verax slumped in his command chair, mandibles twitching with rage and disbelief. His once-proud voice was now raw, guttural. "Emergency jump," he snarled. "Rally point Alpha, all vessels." Zelith stood rigid beside him, his carapace scored with burns, his heart's pounding. He watched the screens as Earth receded, its blue sphere glowing against the void. Not conquered, not broken, still defiant. The command deck fell silent except for the hiss of damaged systems. No one spoke of what they had seen. No one dared. But Zelith knew. History had just been broken. On Earth, the dawn after the invasion rose gray and bloodied. Smoke coiled from cities, skis were scarred with ash, but humanity was alive. Marcus Hale sat on the steps of the shattered hospital, rifle across his knees. His body ached, his face was hollow with exhaustion, but his eyes were burning. Yara emerged from inside, her coat torn, her hands red with blood. She dropped beside him, staring at the horizon. "They left," she said flatly. Marcus nodded, "For now." Her voice dropped, "They'll be back." Marcus didn't argue. He only looked at the survivors gathering in the streets, families searching for each other, fighters dragging alien wreckage into piles, engineers already prying into Graxian tech. Humans moved with frantic purpose, like ants rebuilding a nest after a flood. He felt the weight of it then, not despair but inevitability. The war had just begun. 6 galactic rotations later, Zelith stood before the High Council of the Empire. The chamber was vast, lit with cold silver, the 7 counselors seated high above on their thrones of bone and steel. Their compound eyes glimmered with judgment as the survivors of the Earth campaign knelt in disgrace. Supreme Counselor Thraz spoke, her voice sharp as blades. "Lieutenant Zelith, your report on the Earth debacle, deliver it." Zelith straightened, his wounds still ached, but his voice was firm. "Supreme Counselor, what happened on Earth was no debacle, it was revelation." A murmur rippled through the chamber. One counselor leaned forward, mandibles clattering. "You expect us to believe a primitive, fractured species repelled 30 Graxian warships." "I expect you to believe data," Zelith shot back, emboldened by fury. "Logs, testimonies, damage reports, all confirm the same truth. Humans are not like others we have conquered." Another counselor sneered, "Explain." Zelith activated a holoprojector. Images filled the chamber, humans fighting in streets, sabotaging ships, detonating nuclear warheads in the skis. Soldiers and civilians alike, armed and unarmed, charging Graxian troops with defiance in their eyes. "They adapt," Zelith said. "They reverse-engineered our weapons in hours. They fight as nations and as tribes, as soldiers and civilians. Every loss makes them stronger. Every wound makes them angrier." Counselor Drex, the strategist, clicked his claws. "And now?" Zelith changed the projection. A fleet of crude but growing human vessels filled the air. "Now they build. They have united their fractured world. They call it the Star Shield program, 300 warships under construction, using both their technology and ours, faster than any race we have documented." Silence filled the chamber. Then Supreme Counselor Thraz leaned forward. "Your recommendation, Lieutenant." Zelith's mandibles tightened. "Contain them, build defenses, watch and pray." On Earth, months turned to years. The scars of invasion became foundations for change. Cities rebuilt with hybrid technology. Lunar colonies sprouted overnight, bristling with cannons. Asteroids were mined, orbital platforms rose. Dr. Alina Patel stood before the United Earth Assembly, an impossible thing that had never existed before the invasion. For the first time in history, humanity spoke with one voice. "We were attacked," she said, her voice echoing through the chamber. "We were expected to kneel, we did not. We were expected to break, we adapted. The message is clear, we are no longer preparing for war, we are already at war." Her gaze swept across the room. "We will never wait for them to come again, next time we go to them." Thunderous applause filled the chamber. Marcus Hale was not a politician. He was a soldier, a reluctant one. But now he found himself wearing the patch of the Earth Defense Fleet, standing on the steel deck of humanity's first true warship, the Resolute Dawn. Its hull was patched with Graxian alloys. Its cannons burned with Graxian plasma. Its engines were human ingenuity made furious. Beside him, Yara leaned against the railing, her once white coat replaced by a crisp uniform. She had become chief medical officer of the fleet. "You ever think we'd live to see this?" she asked, watching as crews welded weapons into place. Marcus shook his head. "I thought I'd die in a ruined city, not here." She glanced at him, a rare softness in her eyes. "Then maybe we're meant for more." In the Graxian capital, the High Council debated. Counselor Vex, youngest and sharpest, hissed with unease. "Our intelligence confirms human progress is accelerating. They are expanding beyond their system already." Counselor Drex slammed his claw. "Then strike now, assemble the fleet, burn their world before they become too strong." Supreme Counselor Thraz raised her arms, silencing the chamber. "With what fleet? Half our vessels still burn from the last encounter. To attack now would leave us exposed to the Mardigan Horde, the Scion Collective. No, we must bide our time." Zeleth's voice cut through the murmurs. "Time is their weapon, not ours. Every day we hesitate, they grow stronger. Every moment we wait, they become what we fear." The chamber fell into heavy silence. Finally, Thraz's compound eyes fixed on him. "Then you, Zeleth, will lead our study, learn everything, find their weakness, because if they surpass us, extinction waits." Zeleth obeyed, but the more he studied, the more dread coiled in his chest. He read their histories, wars, disasters, genocides, and yet each time they rose stronger. He studied their culture, songs of defiance, stories of survival, laughter in the face of death. He examined their bodies, fragile, soft, but minds like fire. And then he found something buried in ancient Graxian records, something older than the Empire itself. References to a war long forgotten, a species engineered to fight, abandoned when the Graxians fled their first homeworld. Genetic markers seeded into their blood, designed to awaken under threat. Zeleth froze as he matched the records to human DNA. The sequences aligned. Humans weren't just survivors, they were creations, Graxian creations. A weapon species. And now awakened. Far across the void, on Earth's frontier outpost orbiting Mars, Marcus stood beneath the vast shield dome as the first of the Star Shield fleet rose into space. The Resolute Dawn led the procession, its engines blazing white fire. Crowds cheered from domes, soldiers saluted, children pointed at the stars. Marcus felt it in his bones. Humanity was no longer defending, they were hunting. Beside him, Yara whispered, almost to herself, "They thought we were prey." Marcus's jaw tightened. Now they're going to see what kind of predators we are. The chamber lights dimmed as the holoprojector flickered to life. Strange symbols, jagged lines etched into crumbling stone, shimmered above the table. Zeleth stood rigid, mandibles tight, as the High Council leaned forward. "These are records," he said, voice low but steady, "from before the Empire's rise, from before our expansion. They detail a war we have long erased from history, a war we lost." The counselors hissed, mandibles clattering in disbelief. "Impossible," barked Drex, the strategist. "The Graxian Empire has never been defeated." Zeleth's eyes did not waver. "Not the Empire, our ancestors, before we called ourselves conquerors, before we fled our homeworld. They fought an enemy they could not defeat. To do so, they created something." He shifted the projection. The hololites reformed into spirals of DNA, sequences familiar and alien all at once. Genetic markers, artificial, inserted approximately 20,000 cycles ago. Thraz, the Supreme Counselor, leaned forward, her compound eyes glittering. You are suggesting. Zelith cut her off. Humans are not a natural species. They are engineered. Our ancestors built them as weapons. The chamber fell silent, the weight of the words pressing down like gravity itself. They were designed to adapt, to survive, to grow stronger under pressure. They were left behind when our ancestors fled, abandoned. Zelith's voice dropped, trembling. And now we have awakened them. The silence broke into uproar. Counselors shouted, claws raking across the dais, mandibles clashing in panic and denial. But Thraz did not shout. She simply stared at the DNA spirals and whispered, "We have created our own predator." On Earth, no one knew this truth, yet the consequences of their awakening were visible everywhere. Marcus Hale stood on the deck of the Resolute Dawn as it slipped from Earth's orbit into the black. The first wave of the Star Shield fleet stretched across the void, their engines like a constellation of fire. He should have felt pride. He should have felt triumph. Instead, he felt weight. Not bad for a species that couldn't even agree on what to watch on TV 10 years ago, Yara said beside him, her voice dry, though her eyes glittered with awe. Marcus smirked, but the humor faded quickly. We're leaving home, he said, not just to defend it, to fight out there. Yara's gaze softened. You're scared. Marcus didn't deny it. I've seen what war does to people. We just fought for survival. But once we're out there, what stops us from becoming like them? Yara's voice was quiet. Because we still care, that's the difference. We fight, yes, but we heal too. She rested her hand on the railing. That's what keeps us human. Marcus nodded, but unease gnawed at him. He'd seen the hunger in the assembly's eyes. He'd heard Patel's speech. Humanity wasn't just preparing for defense anymore. They were preparing to hunt. Far beyond Mars, on a Graxian frontier outpost, Zelith stared at intercepted transmissions. Human ships, barely complete, barely tested, were already pushing past the quarantine zone. They had established mining stations on asteroids, listening posts in the Kuiper Belt, and even automated drones racing beyond Pluto. They were searching. For what, Zelith was not sure, but he feared the answer. Counselor Vex appeared on his secure channel, her voice low. Commander, you did not share the full truth with the Council. Zelith hesitated. If they knew, panic would spread through the Empire. And if humans find out before we are ready, Vex pressed. Zelith's mandibles clicked uneasily. Then the galaxy changes forever. Vex leaned closer, her voice sharp. You suspect what they're searching for, don't you? Zelith looked away, his heart's heavy. Yes, they are looking for Old Graia, our lost homeworld. Vex's antenna twitched, and if they find it first. Zelith didn't answer. He didn't need to. The silence was answer enough. The first contact after the invasion came not from Graxians, but from another species. Marcus stood on the Resolute Dawn's bridge when alarms blared. Unidentified vessel detected, the comms officer shouted. Not Graxian design, energy signature unknown. Marcus gripped the railing as the viewscreen lit. A sleek, angular ship drifted into view, its hull glowing with shifting patterns of light. Symbols etched into its surface pulsed like a heartbeat. A voice crackled through the speakers, translated by Earth's patchwork AI systems. This is Captain Aris of the Vera Confederacy. Humanity of Earth, we come not as enemies but with warning. The Graxians are not your only threat. The crew exchanged uneasy glances. Marcus stepped forward. What do you mean? The alien's voice carried weight as if heavy with centuries. We have watched the Graxians for long, but there is another force, older, stronger, the one that drove them from their first homeworld. We believe it stirs again. The bridge went silent. Even the hum of the engines seemed to vanish. Why tell us this? Yara asked, her voice steady. Captain Aris' image leaned forward, his strange eyes gleaming. Because you fight as we once did, and because if they return, humanity may be the only ones who can stop them. In the Graxian capital, Zelith's worst fears were confirmed. His analysts brought him fresh data, long-range probes detecting energy signatures in deep space, patterns that matched no known fleet. They're coming, his aide whispered, mandibles trembling. The enemy our ancestors feared, the ones who broke us before the Empire rose. Zelith stared at the readings, cold dread running through him. Humanity had awakened. but so had something else. On Earth, Dr. Patel convened the assembly in a sealed chamber. She projected intercepted Graxian data, genetic records, fragments of history, proof too shocking to be dismissed. Humans, she said, her voice hard, are not entirely natural. We were altered long ago, enhanced, engineered. The room erupted in disbelief, outrage, fear. Marcus slammed his fist on the table. What are you saying? That were their weapons. Patel's eyes locked with his. I'm saying we were built to survive what they couldn't, and now something is coming, something worse than them. The room fell silent. Whatever our origin, Patel said, we are not tools, we are not slaves. We are the blade that broke free of its maker, and if the galaxy wants war, then Earth will be ready. High above on the resolute dawn, Marcus stood alone on the observation deck. The stars stretched endless and cold. He thought of the boy he had carried through fire, of Yara's stubborn faith, of Patel's hard truth. Predators, survivors, weapons, humans were all of these. But if the galaxy was waking monsters from the dark, then maybe it needed monsters of its own. In the farthest reaches of uncharted space, ancient ships stirred. Colossal engines, dormant for millennia, groaned awake. Hulls older than Graxian history lit with alien fire. Their formation was vast, their purpose singular. They had broken the Graxians once. They would not hesitate to break their creations. And in their path lay Earth. The resolute dawn cut through the void like a spear of fire. Marcus Hale stood on the bridge, uniform stiff against his scarred shoulders, eyes locked on the shifting starfield. The hum of the engines vibrated through the deck, steady and alive. This was not Earth anymore. This was humanity's reach, cold, endless, uncharted space. Entering Graxian quarantine border, reported the navigator. No resistance detected. Marcus didn't relax. He had learned long ago that silence was never safety. It was the pause before thunder. Yara stood beside him, her medical uniform crisp, her voice calm. You're grinding your teeth again. Marcus exhaled, unclenching his jaw. Never trusted empty space. Yara's lips curved. That's because you know it's never really empty. The Earth Defense Fleet stretched around them. 50 vessels, a patchwork of Graxian alloys and human steel, bristling with cannons. Still crude by galactic standards, still experimental but bound together by stubborn will. And at their center, Dr. Alina Patel, speaking across every ship from the command carrier Unity. This is not conquest, her voice echoed. This is preparation. The enemy that once broke the Graxians stirs again. We will not wait for them to come. We will find them, and we will learn how to win. Applause thundered across comm channels, but Marcus felt only weight. Every battle he'd fought had been about survival. This one felt different. It was humanity's first step into becoming something else. Predators. Zelith watched from the other side of the border. His outpost sensors tracked the human fleet as it crossed into territory no Graxian had dared enter in millennia. His mandibles clicked uneasily. Commander, his aide whispered, they are venturing toward the region where the ancient signals were detected. Zelith's eyes narrowed. Then they will meet what we fear. The aide hesitated. Should we warn them? Zelith's hearts twisted. His empire called humans abominations, creations turned feral. But watching them fight had stirred something he couldn't ignore. Respect, perhaps even hope. He answered slowly. If they die there, the galaxy dies with them. Send the warning. The fleet reached a barren system, a dim star with shattered planets orbiting like bones. Debris fields stretched for light years, husks of civilizations long turned to dust. God, Yara whispered, staring at the view screen. It looks like a graveyard. Marcus' gut tightened, or a warning. Patel's voice came across the comm. Deploy probes, scan for energy signatures, we find out what happened here. The probes launched, streaking into the void. For long minutes only static filled the comms, then the first readings came back. Energy, massive, ancient, and moving. Contact, the tactical officer shouted. Multiple vessels inbound, bearing 371, no known design. Marcus gripped the railing as the view screen lit up. They emerged from the darkness like nightmares given form, colossal ships of black metal, their hulls carved with glowing crimson lines. They moved with impossible silence, as though the void itself bent around them. The ancient enemy. The first salvo struck without warning. Red beams lanced through the fleet, cutting 2 ships in half before alarms could even sound. "Shields failing," came the cry from Resolute Dawn. The deck shuddered, sparks raining down. "Return fire," Marcus roared. Plasma cannons spat brilliant light, tearing into the enemy's lead vessel. For a heartbeat, hope flickered, until the beams rippled harmlessly across the black hull, dispersing like rain on glass. "They're absorbing it," Yara realized, horror tightening her voice. Marcus' blood ran cold. Then we hit harder. The battle became chaos. Enemy beams carved through the fleet like blades through cloth. Human ships scattered, some exploding in blossoms of fire, others ramming debris fields in desperate maneuvers. Marcus barked orders, voice steady over the storm. "Shift formation, target weak points, aim for the glowing seams." The fleet obeyed, cannons thundered. At last, one enemy ship shuddered, crimson light flickering, its hull cracked open in a roar of fire. A cheer erupted across comms. Humanity had drawn blood. But the victory was fleeting. More ships emerged from the darkness, dozens, then hundreds. "Impossible," whispered the tactical officer. "How many are there?" Marcus' chest clenched. "Enough to bury us." On Earth, the assembly watched in horror as delayed transmissions streamed in. Ships burning, soldiers screaming, crimson light devouring the void. Dr. Patel's face was stone. "This is worse than we thought." One advisor trembled. "Recall them, bring the fleet home." Patel shook her head. "If we retreat now, the enemy follows. We hold them here or we fight them on Earth's soil." Her voice cut through the chamber like steel. "We stand, even if it breaks us." Back in the graveyard system, Marcus knew they couldn't win. Not like this. "Options," he barked. Yara's voice was low but certain. "We need to hit them where they don't expect it, something they can't absorb." Marcus' eyes flicked to the tactical readouts. The nukes, primitive, ugly analog, their last resort. "Arm them," he ordered. The officer hesitated. "Sir, detonation at this range." "I know," Marcus' voice was iron. "Do it." The nukes launched, dozens of warheads streaking into the black. The enemy ships ignored them, dismissing the primitive weapons. Until the void lit with suns. The explosions tore through the graveyard, EMP waves crashing across space. Enemy ships flickered, their crimson lights dimming. Systems faltered. "Now," Marcus shouted, "all ships attack." The fleet surged forward, plasma cannons hammering. Enemy hulls cracked, shattered. For the first time, the predators bled. But the cost was brutal. Half the human fleet was gone. The Resolute Dawn burned along its flanks, atmosphere venting. Marcus staggered against the console, ears ringing. "Status." The officer's voice was hoarse. "Enemy retreating, regrouping." Marcus' gut twisted. Retreat was never retreat, it was patience. And then the final blow came. The enemy fleet pulsed as one, crimson light blazing. A single massive ship emerged from the darkness, 10 times larger than the rest. Its hull glowed with ancient fire. The comms filled with static, then a voice, not sound but thought, poured into every mind aboard the fleet. "Children of the Graxians, children of war, you awaken at last. We ended your makers, and now we will end you." Marcus staggered, clutching his skull. Yara fell to her knees, blood dripping from her nose. Across the fleet, screams echoed as the voice invaded every thought. The colossal ship fired. The Unity, Patel's command carrier, was struck head-on. For one blinding instant, the flagship burned like a sun. Then it was gone. The silence after was worse than the screams. On the bridge of the Resolute Dawn, Marcus stared at the empty space where Patel's ship had been. His chest hollowed, his throat closed. Yara's hand gripped his arm, trembling. "She's gone." Marcus, jaw clenched, fury burning through his grief. He raised his voice over the stunned silence of the bridge. "She wanted us to fight, then we fight. We'll burn every last one of them if we have to, but we do not kneel." The crew roared in answer, their defiance shaking the deck. But in the void beyond, the ancient fleet stirred in numbers no human could yet imagine. On the Graxian capital, Zelith received the transmission. Patel's death, the enemy's arrival, humanity's defiance. His mandibles clicked slowly, grimly. He whispered to himself, "The galaxy has no idea what it has just awakened." The void burned with crimson fire. Marcus Hale stood on the battered bridge of the Resolute Dawn, his uniform scorched, his knuckles bleeding as he gripped the railing. The fleet was in shambles, half destroyed, the rest limping. Dr. Patel's flagship was gone, erased in a single blast from the colossal enemy vessel. But the humans still fought. Engines critical, the navigator rasped. Weapons down to 30%, hull breaches in sectors 3 through 7. Yara's voice cut through the chaos, sharp as steel. "We're not done yet." She pressed her hand against a wound in her side, blood seeping between her fingers. "Not while we still breathe." Marcus looked at her, then at the ragged crew staring back at him. Broken, bleeding, but unbowed. He drew in a long breath. "Then we show them what humanity is." On the Graxian capital, panic swept through the High Council. Reports streamed in, Patel's fleet crippled, the ancient enemy revealed, their power undeniable. Councillor Drex pounded his claws against the dais. "We must retreat to the core worlds, fortify." Vex hissed, "Retreat and we leave the humans to die. Alone they fall, and when they fall, we are next." Thraz, the Supreme Councillor, turned to Zeleth. "You have studied them. Tell us, can humanity hold?" Zeleth's mandibles clicked softly. "Not alone, but if we fight beside them, if we give them everything, we may stand a chance." Drex roared, "Fight with them, with abominations." Zeleth's eyes burned. "Abominations who did what we could not. They stood against the enemy and lived. They are what we were meant to be." Silence fell, then Thraz's voice rang like iron. "Prepare the fleet, send everything. The Graxian Empire will stand with Earth." The Resolute Dawn staggered as another crimson beam lanced past, scorching its hull. The colossal enemy ship loomed larger, its crimson veins pulsing with malevolent life. "Marcus," Yara whispered, "this isn't just a fleet, it's a war we were built for." Marcus didn't answer, he couldn't, but deep inside the truth gnawed at him. They were built for this. Engineered predators, abandoned weapons. Yet they were more. A comms officer shouted, "Incoming transmission, multiple ships inbound." Marcus tensed, "Graxians." The screen lit up with a sight that stole the breath of every soul on the bridge. Dozens of Graxian warships emerged from hyperspace, weapons blazing. Not attacking humans, but forming a wall around them. Zeleth's voice cut through the comms, steady, defiant. "This is Commander Zeleth of the Graxian fleet. Humanity, today we fight together." Gasps filled the bridge. Yara grinned through blood. Hell must have frozen over. Marcus grinned back, savage and raw. "Then let's set it on fire." The battle became a storm. Human and Graxian ships fought side by side, plasma fire and missiles carving through the void. Nukes detonated, EMP waves crashing against the enemy, staggering them. For every human ship lost, a Graxian vessel surged forward to shield them. For every Graxian crew cut down, human fighters struck back twice as hard. Marcus barked orders, his voice raw but unshakable. "Focus fire on their seams, break their formation." Zeleth's commands echoed across the joint fleet. "Protect their carriers, keep the nukes online." The enemy reeled. For the first time in millennia, they faced unity, predators not tearing at each other but hunting together. And the tide turned. But the colossal ship remained. Its crimson light blazed, beams cutting through allies like knives through cloth. Yara staggered to Marcus, sighed, blood staining her uniform. "That thing won't stop unless we take it out ourselves." Marcus stared at the tactical display. The truth was obvious. The colossal ship was too powerful, but its core, glowing, pulsing, was unstable. "We get inside it," he said. The bridge went silent. "Sir," the officer whispered. Marcus' voice hardened. "We ram them, we tear our way in, then we plant the biggest damn nuke we've got and light it up." Yara's lips parted, trembling. "That's suicide." Marcus met her gaze. "Then it's worth it." The Resolute Dawn turned, engines screaming as it dove toward the monstrous vessel. Enemy fire lanced past, shredding its hull, but it pushed forward, shields burning, armor cracking. "All ships cover us," Marcus roared. The Graxian fleet obeyed. They swarmed the giant, plasma fire hammering its flanks, buying seconds at the cost of lives. The Resolute Dawn slammed into the hull with earth-shaking force. Metal screamed. The ship tore through crimson armor, ripping into the beast's heart. The bridge shuddered, sparks raining, alarms howling. Marcus staggered, blood in his mouth. "Yara, get the nuke ready." She nodded, eyes blazing. On it. They moved through the burning corridors, armored Marines and engineers following, dragging the nuclear warhead on a makeshift sled. The enemy ship's interior pulsed like veins of molten blood, its walls alive with alien light. Figures emerged, hulking shapes of black armor, eyes burning crimson, the enemy. The firefight erupted. Plasma bolts lit the halls. Men and women screamed, fell, bled. Marcus emptied his rifle, rage and grief blinding him. Yara dragged the sled forward, every step leaving blood behind. Keep moving. At last they reached the core chamber. A vast sphere of crimson energy pulsed, alive, hungry. Marcus set the warhead against its base. His hands shook as he primed it. Yara collapsed against the console, gasping, "Marcus." He turned to her. She smiled faintly, even through pain. "Don't miss." The countdown began. Zelith watched from his flagship as the resolute Dawn disappeared into the colossal ship. His mandibles trembled. "Signal lost," his aide whispered. Zelith lowered his head. "They gave us our chance." Moments later, the enemy vessel convulsed. Crimson light blazed too bright, then shattered into fire. The explosion tore through the graveyard system, shockwaves scattering debris like meteors. The colossal ship was gone. Silence fell, then cheers erupted across the human Graxian fleet. Against the impossible, they had won. But victory carried scars. Of 50 human ships, barely a dozen survived. The resolute Dawn was gone. Marcus Hale was gone, or so they believed. Yara's name was carved into memorials alongside Patel's and thousands more. Earth wept, Graxians mourned, but both remembered. They had stood together and endured. Months later, on the Graxian capital, the High Council convened again. Supreme Counselor Thraz spoke to the assembly. "The humans are not prey, they are not abominations, they are allies. Together we face what comes." And in the shadows of the chamber, Zelith whispered to himself, "We did not create predators, we unleashed survivors." On Earth, children gazed at the stars not with fear but with hunger. Memorials lined every city, yet so did shipyards. Humanity was not done. They had lost heroes but gained fire. And on a distant, secret outpost, sensors detected something impossible. A life pod, scarred, burned, bearing the markings of the resolute Dawn. Inside, barely alive, was Marcus Hale. His eyes opened, cracked lips whispering a single word. "War."